when you're experiencing the first come on of a psychedelic, including ketamine, you feel differently. Strange feelings come. And the tendency of the ego self is to feel protective and frightened and what's going on. And the right kind of music simply calms that fear, that anxiety, and allows one to, open up to let go into the experience.
3, 2, 1, lift off.
Welcome back to the Ketamine Startup Podcast. This is where we talk about building a ketamine therapy practice, industry insights, and what's shaping the future of psychedelic medicine. Today, we're launching something new, Soundbites from the Vault. These are shorter, standalone segments from earlier episodes that we think are worth revisiting, easy to digest, and immediately relevant to your practice. This one comes from episode 32, our conversation with Steve Gelberg, author of Tuning In, Experiencing Music in Psychedelic States. Steve spent years researching the role of music in psychedelic-assisted therapy, and what he shares here is genuinely useful, whether you're setting up your first playlist or rethinking an approach you've had in place for years. In this soundbite, we dig into why music is doing a lot more than filling the silence during ketamine therapy sessions, how it interacts with the ego's natural defense response, and the practical question providers face: what should you actually be playing? We hope you enjoy this soundbite. Now let's dive in.
So can you tell us about the similarities that you've noticed between music and psychedelics, just independent of each other?
Sure. I talk about it in terms of a shared ontology between music and psychedelics, that both are not easily pinned down by analysis. Music is a non-tangible thing, even among all the arts. It's invisible. It's sound waves that are in the ear, that in the air, that somehow come into the ear and go to the brain. It's a very kind of, unless you're a hard scientist, kind of a mystical process of, it's not a direct hearing. The brain is interpreting waves of air traveling through the ether. So it's quite in and of itself, music is a kind of mystery, a kind of mystical thing. And many writers, philosophers, and just writers about music through the ages have written about music as this kind of mysterious force. I talk about that in one chapter. And an important part of the power of music is its emotional, psychological import. If you truly tune into music with or without psychedelics, it can go to a very, very deep place. It evokes emotion. There are many quotes in the book from people saying basically that music is the storehouse of all human emotions. So depending on how much one gives oneself to the hearing, and I talk about that too, we are conditioned in a way not to hear. Our brains are so busy and our senses are so assaulted by media and sense, just everything, that we've lost our ability to listen in a deeply meditative, conscious way. But if you talk to musicians, people who are deeply in music, they just have this sixth sense, it may appear to us, of feeling the depths of musical communication. Psychedelics similarly have a way of opening the whole emotional sphere of consciousness. Somehow they unblock all the blocking that we do in the course of creating an ego and functioning in this world, all the protections and defenses we have against feeling too much or feeling everything or managing how we feel out of fear of feeling too much or feeling the wrong things. But the therapeutic power of these psychosubstances is their almost miraculous ability to open up the closed down emotional and subconscious realms. And so it's easy to see how psychedelics and music have a magical synergy that is really unique in just opening the heart, piercing through the veil of the subconscious, and making it accessible for examination and for therapeutic help deep contents of consciousness. So music is not just a kind of nice thing to have, but when you're doing a psychedelic session, it's not just something to relax you as you're coming off into the drug, or something to make, because when you're experiencing the first come on of a psychedelic, including ketamine, you feel differently. Strange feelings come, and the tendency of the ego self is to feel protective and frightened and what's going on. And, um, the right kind of music simply calms that fear, that anxiety, and allows one to, open up to let go into the experience. So that's a very fundamental, basic first step in the value of music. But beyond that, it aids in opening the defensive structure of the ego so that what needs to be dealt with, the cause of one's depression or phobias or traumas or whatever it is, uh, can come to the surface. So music is just this extraordinary ally in treatment. And from what relatively little I've read, some articles you sent me, it's clear that people who simply using ketamine for um, anesthetic purposes began to notice that other things would begin to come up. It didn't just, you know, that there was this whole psychological dimension that came up, and that music seemed to relax people. And that's just the first step in exploring the potential beneficial role of music in these kind of treatments.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. And as you're speaking, one of the things that was coming up for me is when a mother or a father has a baby who they're holding in their arms and trying to soothe them, let's say that they're crying and, very uncomfortable. One of the things that we just naturally do as humans is sing to our little ones.
Of
And
course.
whether it's humming or singing a nursery rhyme. And it's
Mhm,
fascinating. I have a 5-year-old daughter. And I remember when she was younger, I would just hum to her or sing to her, or my wife would, and that
mhm,
would, within minutes calm her down. And
mhm,
so it's fascinating how the music that we can produce, and it might just be as simple as humming for our little ones, can help calm them down. But then, yet, that can also play a role during their ketamine session or their psychedelic session in helping calm them down, bring their ego defenses down. And I think it is something very ancient within our society. Because I know, I mean, I guess birds, they make music, whales,
mhm,
but it's not a lot of animals who do this, and humans and birds. I know,
mhm,
dolphins, whales, they'll sing to each other, but yeah, this music, I think
mhm.
it's almost ancient and primal in a way
Sure.
for us.
Why do we have lullabies in every culture and every language? Lullabies aren't just, aren't just to make the baby go to sleep, but they're to calm, relax, soothe. Um, One psychedelic writer, and I quote them, suggest that the sounds of women singing, of female voices, he recommends that as one thing to use in these therapies, because the sort of natural primeval need to hear the mother's voice is touched by just simply a calming female voice. And one of my playlists, one of the more recent ones that I decided to put together, was healing female voices. And they come from many places, from religious music to ethnic world musics to, new agey things. Just the sound of women singly or in choral settings can have that maternal, that primeval maternal effect.
Yeah, and that actually leads to my next question is, regarding selection of music, because some people will resonate with classical music, other people will resonate with instruments. So tell us a little bit about how should someone in the ketamine or just general overall psychedelic space, how should they go about choosing the type of music? And I guess it's two perspectives. One is, the therapist or practitioner who is administering the medicine versus the individual selecting it on their own. So, any ideas or suggestions on selection of music?
There's so much to say about that, but I'll briefly. Uh, One of the current debates is classical music, yes or no? Because in the origins of the modern phase, beginning in the 50s, of psychedelic therapy, classical music, or certain kinds of classical music, not anything, were the main source of music. And a big reason for that is because in the 50s and 60s, you didn't yet have the whole uprise of ambient music. And even new age music was just getting underway in the late 50s, really into the 60s. So, because it's important not to include music with lyrics, it kind of, and I'll explain why, instrumental music is what is generally seen as necessary. And instrumental music, it left you with a choice between, well, back then, classical and maybe jazz and maybe ethnic or world music where the singing is in a foreign language, which will not disturb. So the reason for no lyrics is because when you're going into a psychedelic sort of out of body or out of the normal mind state, lyrics can bring you down into a thinking state. The content, the rational or cognitive content of the words, whatever they are, can be a distraction from that sort of free form letting go into, that space. So you don't want the music to put you in a thinking state, through the words, even if it's, I want to hold your hand, you don't want to think about anything. You want to just let go into the experience. So in more recent years, we have ambient music, which has become probably more commonly used, although really both are used. And it's the whole category of neoclassical, which is kind of between classical and ambient. It uses Western classical instruments, but in a more relaxing ambient kind of way. So I have a whole playlist of neoclassical. It's a sort of, I don't want to call it a compromise between the two, but it has like the best of both. It has the sonic tonal richness of classical instruments, of strings, and so on, along with a relaxing ambience. And a very basic point is not to have music that's agitating, that is, over dramatic and overly emotionally demanding or dissonant. You want music that is, generally easy on the ears. There are times when, like, certain classical pieces become more dramatic, and there are times when that's appropriate, when you're probing certain emotions. But this whole question of what music to use is a constant ongoing discussion, debate, and those who present opinions about it often don't have much rationale behind it. And I mean, one of the purposes of my book is to give the background, a sort of understanding of the effects of music, so that one can make better judgments about what kind of music to use. In the book, I also do a survey of what the pioneers of music-assisted, psychedelic-assisted therapy used. I say, well, so and so recommended this one, that one, and the other one. So I list a lot of the mostly classical pieces that have traditionally been used. So there's a lot that goes into it. In terms of, there are disagreements about whether have the person bring their own music, because somebody may, if somebody loves heavy metal, they may bring their heavy metal, and that's not the right music to listen to if you want to be in a peaceful state. So within reason, a person can, the client can be, you can suggest them to bring music that they like, and examples of that are given in those few articles you sent me. But generally speaking, therapists will have their ready-made playlists that they like to use that they have found to be effective. But it's a very fluid field, and I really try to emphasize in the book that there should be no dogma about it, and that those who present a dogmatic approach to it, this is what you must hear and not that, I say, try to stay clear of that, because music reception is a very subjective thing, as is psychedelic and related experiences. So there should be few hard and fast rules, but those sort of common sense, basic guidelines that are important.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's Soundbite from the Vault. If this conversation sparked your thinking about how you're running your ketamine therapy sessions, the full episode with Steve Gelberg is worth listening, and you can find it in the show notes. If you're enjoying the podcast and want more curated insights on ketamine therapy and psychedelic medicine, our newsletter is a great resource wherever you are in your journey. You can find that link along with all our episodes and show notes at ketaminestartup.com/podcast. If you found this episode valuable, we'd love it if you'd subscribe on your favorite platform, and a 5-star review always helps us reach more thoughtful medical professionals like you. And a quick reminder, the information shared in this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical or legal advice. Always consult with qualified professionals for your specific situation. And with that, we'll see you next time.